Hello and welcome to Zapped to the Past. My name is Adrian Mills and I am joined as ever by Graham Raddings. If you don't know and you've not listened before, this is a podcast where we talk about games that were released for the Commodore 64, whilst also taking a brief look at what was going on in UK music, film and TV back in the 1980s. We are using the magazine Zapped 64 as a monthly guide for the games to focus on, but we are in no way affiliated with Zapped 64 itself. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the games reviewed in issue 6 of Zapped 64, which was the very dry, mild and fairly sunny month of October 1985. Graham, tell us what we can expect in this episode.
At the heart of this Pass the Parcel present, Monty on the Run and Nodes of Yesod, two cracking games, wrapped in kind of Super Zaxxon-y, Speed King-y, shoot-em-up-y, Vortron-y paper. Not so good. And of course, with the background soundtrack of Jennifer Rush. What else could we possibly have crammed in here? Not much.
Sounds good. So, our first game this month is seminal for a few reasons. This is a really big barnstormer of a title, I think, for one reason over everything else. And that game is Monty on the Run. Okay, so this came out this month. It got a sizzler. And just to state, this is not the cover game. The reason this isn't, normally we start off with a game that was on the cover. We haven't done this month because the cover is dedicated to the game Wizardry, which is not actually reviewed in this issue. There's just a preview of it. So make of that what you will. It's a decent Oliver Frey cover, very Wizardry-like. There's some spell stuff going on and someone leaning back and
magical,
the wizard and stuff. And yeah, there's lots of effects and stuff, and it's fantastical. But hey-ho, it's not Monty on the Run. We're going to talk about that instead. So enough of the cover, back. The thing with Monty on the Run is it's very easy to say it's another one of those, and we've spoken about these for a lot, flick screen collectathons. Okay, and we've spoken a lot of them, the platformer type, Jet Set Willy types, which this is more in the roots of, and that's where this kind of comes from. However, I think we're starting to see programmers get a bit better with the Commodore 64. They're getting a bit more use out of it. And so in that respect, this is kind of superior to most for quite a few reasons, in my opinion. It's really well presented from the get-go. There's a nice title screen, which is nice. Got a really nice demo-type, big scrolling message across the top. And it looks bright and it's nice and it's welcoming. And I'm not going to talk about the obvious thing just yet. We'll get to that. For anyone that knows Monty on the Run, they'll know what that is. But this game is kind of unusual in its the way it actually wants you to play, or the way what you've got to do in it, because from the get-go on the title screen you have to choose 5 objects because Monty is on the run from the police, and you've got to make your way through many screens of perilous platforming action with weird objects and things like that. It's typical Manic Miner Jet Set Willy type thing, but you need to pick 5 objects from the get-go. And the thing is, here you pick the wrong objects, and there's a number of objects, I can't remember what they are, but there's like a rope and a mask or a disguise and all kinds of things. You pick the wrong ones and you ain't going to finish the game. So that's tough from the get-go, isn't
Tough
it? Yeah, that's like, here's 5 things out of 10. Pick the right 5 right things with no clues, nothing. It's kind of just, you've got to go into it. And, so this is, forcing you to replay it, because there's no way in hell you're going to pick the right from the get-go. It's just not going to happen. And really, that should give you a sense of the difficulty on display here, because that's the other thing about Monty on the Run. Bloody hard. It's really, really tricky because it's fast. It's really fast. It's for one of these games. And what was the one we reviewed the other month? It's Brian Bloodaxe.
No, never say those words.
Where everything would slow. When anything more than like 3 or 4 sprites appeared on screen, and each screen's speed was dependent on how many bad guys were on it. That's never a good way to design your game. But this doesn't. This keeps up a constant pace. It's fast. It's responsive. Everybody's been to the School of Impossible mission this issue, because this is not the first game we'll talk about where the hero does somersaults. It seems that somersaulting was de rigueur back in this period of time. So, Impossible Mission had started to influence quite a lot of things. Yeah, it's really hard as nails. But the good thing is, because it's fast, because it's responsive, generally, if you die, it's your fault. You didn't jump at the right time, or one of the stompy things stomped down on you, or whatever. It's good, it's fast, and it's bright, it's colourful. It's got that usual, typical, this kind of platformy sense of weirdness, but in a good sense. All the weird objects that go around, the big nosy bonk thing, the ghosts, everything. They're bright, they're colourful. It does at times, you can see its spectrum roots, should we say, with single colour sprites and things like that. But they look nice. And this feels like a nice, fast platformer. And obviously, we're going to talk about one element of it, and I think that'll come in a minute, sort of thing. But before we do that, what did you think?
Of Monty on the Run?
Yes. No.
Obviously, of a completely different game.
Of Brian Bloodaxe. What did you think of Brian Bloodaxe?
Brian Bloodaxe was crap, so let's just get it out of the way. And continues to be and will remain so forever. Monty on the Run. Look, I'll confess, I don't like these kind of games. I don't. But I've made no secret of that. They're all kind of the same surrealist type idea. Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy, all of them they're all a bit weird. However, if you're going to do it, and we said this before with other games of this type, if you're going to do it right, do it well, do it good. So, make the graphics good, make it fast, make it playable, make it impossible, which this one kind of is, I think, in a difficult way, but make it so that you want to come back playing it. And in all fairness, this one manages to pull it off. So I actually quite like Monty on the Run. It is the only Monty game I like.
That's true, yeah.
And it's by and far the best one of the lot. And I mean it's the best one on any platform, and it's the best one out of all of the series of the games. I'm not going to mention one of the obvious reasons why people are drawn to it, but you're right, there is a nice big graphic vibe to this. The graphics are quite nice and high res. It plays really well. If you put a different character in there, you've got almost a variant of a Mario game, really, with those kind of stompers and hazards and things happening. So it sort of predates, I don't know if it predates it, but it's kind of around the same sort of idea. So it's all pretty good. I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing it. I just find, like, with all of these games, it's just incredibly hard, incredibly difficult. And that, unfortunately, means that it's, for me, the longevity it's not going to go on forever and ever. I'm not going to be able, I find these games infuriating after a certain amount of time, especially with this particular one. Controlling it is sort of left and right and jumping around's fine, but why somersault? It gets annoying after a while, and I'm tired of somersaulting in games. In Way the Exploding Fist, somersaults. In this game, somersaults. Impossible Mission, somersaults. And it's just, why am I somersaulting in so many games? If I want to get on a platform, I'm pretty sure I'd just climb on it. Somersaulting is the least likely thing I would do, even if I was a mole. But anyway, long and the short of it is, nice fun game, very controllable, very good, and it does move at a pace, and it's the pace which I really like. So,
and I think
gets my vote.
It is. Let's not beat around the bush sort of thing. And I think if you take that one element away that we've kind of avoided right now sort of thing, I don't think this would be quite as enjoyable. But we haven't actually spoken really about that thing that, we kind of need to. So it's got one hell of a soundtrack, hasn't it?
Yes. I think it's safe to say that Rob Hubbard outdid himself with this particular piece of music. Well, I say outdid himself. I think he set a benchmark. Because he'd done music for other games, and we've talked about that music for other games. Confusion was a Rob Hubbard score, Action Biker, whatever that game was called, we never did decide, did we? But this one seems to have, just I think is where it's an actual proper piece of music composed for the game. So someone sat and taken time to describe the game, and I suspect Rob Hubbard's gone, right, if it's this kind of game, it needs this kind of music, and I think I would argue the music is more or less perfect for this kind of game. It's not repetitive. It's not a tiny little loop of something that drives you literally crazy, a la Manic Miner or Jet Set Willy. It's an actual fully fledged piece of music. It even continues when you're playing the game, although the game, of course, has sound effects which knock out one of the channels. And it really drives the game on at a pace. And I think when you're playing the game, it makes it more fun. It makes it kind of more manic. It makes it feel like you're on the run a bit more. And because of that, I think it really suits the game. Even the high score music is really good in this game. Even when you die and you get that little sort of fanfare, everything has been considered, and for the first time the game had a proper score, and the sound chip of the Commodore 64, the SID chip, was being flexed, a bit like we saw with Way the Exploding Fist, where that game graphically all of a sudden you saw the Commodore 64 flex its muscles. Here, audio, in terms of audio, it just flexed, and boy did it make this game really good. I mean, an average game, it's an above average game, but it's and it is good at this type of thing, but add that music to it and wow, you've got something extra special.
Absolutely, yeah. It drives this game along, and this game would just be probably another one of those, although a bit faster and maybe a bit more playable if it wasn't for that soundtrack. And I think over the last, is it like three issues, we had like thing on a spring. Then we had Chariots of Fire. It's not Chariots of Fire in Hypersports.
That's right, yeah.
And we kind of got this back and forth between, musicians who have come to this, come to the C64 and are almost trying to one up each other. You can feel this like, oh, that's good, right? And it felt, sort of like a musical competition was kind of going on. And then we got, with Monty on the Run. And as you say, even the Death Knell tune, that high score tune is beautiful. Something I would just leave on loop for ages. And it's fabulous. And we have to discuss it. You have to, don't you? It's the real start. This is. I think, Thing on a Spring kicks it off. Hypersports takes it to another level, and now we're there. We're at peak Sid. I don't know if you want to call it, and from here on in, it's just like every month for the next few months. I think we're going to get something special from an audio standpoint. I think there's not probably I can't remember, but there's just loads and loads and loads of good stuff to come musically, which is one of the things that this machine is known for.
Yep.
And it's one of the things I was sort of looking forward to getting to and actually listening to these things again and going, yeah, it's really good. That's Monty on the Run. It is another one of those. It's a fast, well-paced, really, really difficult one of those.
It is,
but
tough.
It's lifted hugely by that soundtrack. I mean, and it is right to call it a score, a soundtrack. This is a proper audio accompaniment to the action.
Well, that's what sets it apart for me. The game itself, like I said, the graphics are good on this game. Don't get me wrong, they're really well drawn. And if you compare it to the other games of this type, and I'm not going to even say the BB game, but if you compare it to the games of this type, the graphics are way better. It stands to reason that you've got great graphics, you've got polish. The game's polished. We've said this before. The game's polished, and it sets about doing the thing it does very well. That's all great. The soundtrack is just the final piece that makes it a really supersonic game. It's really, really good. And I tell you what, having not played Monty on the Run for quite a number of years, and I mean quite a long time, to come back to it, you really realise how important the game music is in that game. When you haven't, because I've listened to it decontextualised. I've listened to Monty on the Run soundtrack and the music. I must have listened to that Sid on different players of different times by different people so many times over the years. It's unreal. But in context of that game, at that time, when it first starts and the big scrolly message and the Monty on the Run and all of that, I think it's brilliant. And it works hand in hand with the game. I have to say, it's the beginning of great things for the Commodore 64 in terms of its music. But let's there may also be some misfires along the way too.
There's always misfires. Not everything's perfect. So we like Monty on the Run.
Yes.
If only, go and listen to that bloody soundtrack.
Yeah, go and do it.
There we go, Monty on the Run. So let's move on. To our next game, and this is one that I believe was something you liked back in the day. I think you mentioned that you were a bit of a fan of this, and this is Speed King.
Yes, I was. I had, before I start about my revisiting of this game, Speed King is a motorbike racing game. Think pole position on motorbikes, principally really it. So you select your racer, you select your bike, and then you can race, you can practice, you could do all that stuff on different tracks. That's kind of the game, and the aim of the game, of course, is to win the race. Fairly straightforward game logic. So you know that when you're playing this game, it's going to have some limitations, okay? The track is going to play a bit like a pole position game. So it's going to have a track that's kind of bendy and wobbly, but okay, you get over that. It's a bit pit stop 2-y in that respect. The main problem I had with this on revisiting it was I originally really liked this game. I used to play it for quite some time. I think because I got it for maybe $1.99 or cheap, because I think there was 2 versions released at some point anyway. So I had a cheaper version of it, which made it feel a bit more value for money. It is an enjoyable motorbike racing game in the same way that Pit Stop 2 is an enjoyable car racing game in the same way. It's not an exact simulation, it is what it is. However, this game has an issue which I didn't realise, and that is that it becomes impossible to not hit other motorbikes when you're riding at speed. I mean, there's some really clever ideas in this game. The way you change gears on the motorbike is clever because you push up and down on your controller to change the speed of the motorbike during the gears. So you can quickly whiz up and down the gears as you go around the track, which makes it sort of, so you're not just playing that sort of 1-2 gear game that you get in pole position where if you go into the second gear and hit a bend, you're going to blow up for no really blow up for any reason in that game. And this one, it's all great. If you're the only motorbike on that road, you can go 200 mile an hour, no problem. As soon as you see any motorbikes coming towards you, you are dead meat, no matter what speed. Unless you slow down to a full stop, you are dead. So you need to think quite tactically. So you need to think, right, you do have to use those gears in this game, and you do have to play it that way in order to, you can't just bez your way around the track and hope not to hit something, because you're going to die and you're going to hit something and you're going to blow up. There's no way around it. So you do have to use the gears, but even by using the gears to slow down and try and be tactical, if you try and overtake those motorbikes, chances are it ain't going to happen because you're going to hit one. And that, for me, that became a real blocker on this revisit. So my fond childhood memories of playing Speed King and racing around on my motorbike, and by the way, I have no affinity for motorbike racing whatsoever, although I do acknowledge that it was dangerous. And I did meet that really famous motorbiker once. I can't remember his name now because that's how important it was to me, but what's his name?
Martin
Sheen, yeah. Is it Martin Sheen? But Barry Sheen, not Martin Sheen.
Barry Sheen. Oh, not Martin Sheen. No, it's
that
Mr. Sheen.
Is that guy with the crazy hair?
Mr. Sheen, he had a very, very polished bike.
That was what you were going to say then. Yes. It wasn't Martin Sheen, it was Barry Sheen, yes. And thank you.
Not Charlie Sheen.
It could have been Martin Sheen for the difference, because it's a Sheen, one of the Sheens. Barry, spray can. Anyway, one of them. So suffice to say, I had no affinity for motorbike games, but I did enjoy it at the time, but a little. I must have been better at it than I am now. Maybe my hand-eye coordination's just aged or something. But I could not get past motorbikes unless I kept hitting them, which I believe is probably counterproductive when you're trying to win a race. But, call me old-fashioned and all that. What do you think? Did you play it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I am absolutely. I'm glad to hear all that from you, Tilton, because I thought I was just rubbish at this, but I was exactly the same. Solid. I put solid, but very, very hard bike racing sim thing. It's got nice visuals and a good track, good sense of speed, and decent controls with gears. As you say, that's all good. But, and this is the issue sort of thing, it's not that it's impossible to aim it, it's that the other riders are just way too twitchy.
Yes.
They're like,
yes.
flip. And that's the problem sort of thing. It's all right to, you go around a corner or something like that, and there's other riders on the track, that's fine. But there's other riders that just want to just pile across into you sort of thing in about 3 frames, and you've got you don't have enough. There's not enough responsiveness in the control.
No, and the bike doesn't have any weight, does it? It's just not like there's weight and gravity in the bikes. They kind of float around like feathers in the wind.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that there's like 20 other races on the track, and there's a nice sense to all this. But yeah, it really is let down by the fact of like those other riders sort of thing. Might be better with just 10 on maybe sort of thing, so that they could have been a bit less twitchy. I think there's too, it's probably trying to push too much maybe for the old, that processor.
Yeah.
And so therefore, there would have been not being so twitchy. I think that's the problem. And it annoyed the crap out of me as well when, if you did get into the park and you had to slow down or whatever, they would just go through you with a beep, with a beep of the horn, beep, beep, rather than crashing into the back of you. But it's like, hang on a minute, you're the only one that can crash, which was frustrating.
Yeah.
And I think that this was released, at full price, $9.95. You are correct. There was a Mastertronic re-release, I think, the following year, which was pretty much, it's exactly the same game. They just changed the colours on the title screen and then charged $1.99 for it. And I think at $1.99, I would be a lot more forgiving of this because I think, I seem to remember playing this quite a bit in the day. So I think it was very close to, I think it predates, things like Super Hang-On in the arcade and things like that. So it predates things like that. And this is, for the time, this is a pretty decent racing sim. But yeah, I can't get past the twitchiness of the other riders.
No, I agree.
And but I would still put this up for one of, this is actually all right sort of thing. This is still nowhere near as bad as the rude awakening I had with Richard Petty's Talladega.
Nothing would prepare you for that. The game where you can only turn left. And I tell you, the other thing I noticed with this, well, as a sort of a final farewell as we speed away from Speed King, was that when you're zooming towards things, I mean, can you imagine in reality if you're zooming down a motorway in a motorbike and then you see a motorbike in the distance and then a second later it's a blocky mass 3 feet before your motorbike, and that's kind of happens in this. They go from being distant to being really close to you almost instantly. So they've either got teleportation devices, or they just could have done with a little bit more thought into the animation as you zoom towards them. I know it's early days and graphics and everything, but just so it doesn't feel quite so jumpy, because they kind of loom on you, and then all of a sudden you can't really avoid them. That's what I found is, like you say, they float around in the wind like feathers, and as soon as you get near them, it's nigh impossible. I'm pretty sure it's It's actually Speed King, brain brackets, Death Race version, because they are trying to kill you. If this was a Mad Max game, you'd probably get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. Mad Max King.
Speed King was okay, I guess, but you know what? I revisited it, and either I'm not very good at playing this game, which is likely, or they made it quite difficult, which is even more likely. So $1.99,
yeah, I think it's
passable.
Yeah, but at $9.95,
no chance.
Probably not. It's still got quite a decent review though, but I would say it's passable.
Yes.
There you go.
Passable.
All right. So, what's up next? So, up next is a sequel to a game I think we have discussed before in the mythical episode 0. Or did we do this in episode 1? I cannot remember. We've spoken about this at some point, but God knows where it was.
Episode 0.
It was episode 0, so you won't have heard this yet. But anyway, Super Zaxxon. A Zaxxon so good it had to be called Super Zaxxon. Because that was the naming convention of the day, I guess.
Yeah,
everything was super, which led us to Super Mario Brothers and things like that.
Yeah.
Nintendo really did that, didn't they? They like the word super on everything. In fact, if you go look at the list of games for the NES or the SNES, the number of supers in there is quite crazy, especially on the SNES, which obviously Super Nintendo, that's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah. Stands to
anyway,
reason.
so Super Zaxxon. No. It doesn't bode well from the title screen where it's got 1984 on it.
I thought that.
So we're in October 1985, and there's a game being released and being reviewed, which is 1984. So we're already 10 months out. That's at its best guess. Now, the problem with this, before I talk about what the game is, sort of thing. Actually, let's talk about the game. It's a left to right isometric scrolling shoot 'em up. So bottom left to top right, you pilot a shuttle type craft. Of some description, like a plane or a space shuttle, something like that, and you shoot things that come down this blue-coloured highway landscape that's floating in space. You get through this, you have to shoot, I always found this a bit weird sort of thing, you have to shoot fuel tankers, and then somehow this refuels you by some kind of weird space osmosis. Which then allows you to keep going. You fly through beams which have handy gaps, which are plane-shaped, which you can fit through. And you get through them. At some point, you then dive into a tunnel, the most boring tunnel since the Dartford tunnel. And so you go through there, and then you get out the other end. You repeat this, and then at the end, a flame-spitting dragon, peat dragon type, Chorlton and the Wheelie type dragon thing appears, and you have to shoot it in the head. And then keep repeatedly shooting it in the head, because I kept killing it, and then it just reappeared. And then I shot it again, and then it reappeared. And then I shot it again. At this point, I didn't know whether the game had crashed or what had happened. Eventually, I just gave up. But that's the game. So there you go. Don't go play Super Zaxxon, because that's me telling you about it is more enjoyable than you going playing it. It's not great. So my point with all this sort of thing, coming back to that 1984 thing, and we've seen this a little bit. We saw this with like Miyagi Ace, and we've seen this with a few games sort of thing, that they were getting these American titles made a year or two before. Buck Rogers was another one we've mentioned before.
Yeah.
Made in 1983, 1984, we had those crappy Epic games, Starfire and Fire One, that were brought over, and this was $9.95. This was top tier price. That were then brought over to the UK, repackaged and re-released and resold. And you're getting essentially a year or two old games for full price. And you played it in the arcade, you remember it. I can't remember when Super Zaxxon came out in the arcade, but we're talking a year or two, obviously, before the port would happen. So this is old, but you'd recognise the names, you might go buy it, and then you'd realise you'd been sold a lemon. And that's the point with this. It's dull. It's a game out of time. It's annoying even now, sort of thing, because when up against some of the better games that are coming out that were made specifically round about now, this just feels like, once again, we've used this term time and time again, it's just a cash grab coming off the back of the crash in America and everything like that. They were just looking for places to shove out this software, and the UK was a willing market, and out this stuff came, and it's frustratingly annoying. Even 35 years on, I feel angry. So,
okay.
I can't recommend Super Zaxxon in any way, shape, or form. Did you like it?
No, I didn't. I can tell you why. I agree with everything you've said, apart from anything else. So, the arcade was released in 1982. So, this is another late conversion, or it was converted and then someone sat on it for a while and thought, never release that because it's rubbish. And then someone went, but you could make a quick book. And they were like, all right, release it. Let's go. I never liked it. I don't think I've ever seen it in the arcade. If I did, I probably would have avoided it. I'm not a fan of isometric shoot-'em-ups. I'm not a fan of isometric shoot-'em-ups that have really difficult to navigate walls in. So this was kind of a lose-lose for me. Just boring. It's just boring.
Yeah.
It lacks any real speed. There's not enough enemies to really trouble you in any way. You end up fighting that stupid thing at the end, which I think is the Zaxxon. I think that's the monster. That's the super Zaxxon. And I just killed it, and it came back, and it killed it, and it came back, and I killed it. And then when I finally beat it, it was back to the same kind of dodge the wall, shoot the thing. I didn't understand the counterproductive nature of blowing up my fuel to refuel myself. It seemed really odd. So I just thought it was boring, a really dull, boring game. And, a conversion of a really dull, boring game is not going to get any better if you take away even more of its graphics. It's just going to get more boring. So boring. Yeah, that's it. And it has that horrible isometric bug, which infuriates me, is that if you go to the top of the limit of your isometric ability in height, it means that there's parts of the screen you can't get to in the left-hand side, so because it's on that kind of isometric runway. So if you move all the way over to the left, it's not actually all the way over to the left. It's you can't get there. So there's kind of an area of play that you can't do. You can't explore the whole screen in the way I'd like to have anyway. It's just annoying. One more annoying nail in its dull coffin, really. So I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't super Zaxxon for me. It was a big super snooze, switch it off, boring. Put more enemies in it if you're going to make it exciting. Boring game, boring.
Yeah, that tunnel section is so dull.
Why put a tunnel section in it? What's the point? It's just putting a roof on you boring. Make your levels even more boring. Make them even more repetitive in the terms of the background. Just make it more boring.
Because it's floating in space.
Well, you mean you've never been through a space tunnel?
Well, you just fly around it.
Well, you wouldn't choose to go through it.
The thing about space is it's kind of open.
It is. Well, and the daft thing is, it's like there's less hazard in the tunnel than there is out the tunnel. So when you go into the tunnel, I was expecting it to be more walls or difficult to maybe some kind of challenge just to make it less boring. But all they did was just put nothing in a tunnel. I was like, I could do that myself. I don't need to load this piece of nonsense up to do that. And if I want to just aimlessly flying around, avoiding walls and tunnels, well, if you've ever driven around anywhere around London, you tend to do that a lot anyway. So no, dull, boring. That's my super boring.
Super Zax off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not Zax on, Zax off. Yes,
Zax off.
Well said. I agree.
As Miyagi-san would say, Zax on,
super Zax off. Super Zax on, super Zax off. You're not going to learn anything about karate, but you'll avoid that crappy game. Mr. Miyagi has spoken.
There you go. Don't play Super Zax off.
You've got me in the whole thought process about Mr. Miyagi arcade tips. Just, I can imagine all these kids. Mr. Miyagi, I can't get to level 4 on Donkey Kong. You must learn to go down before you go up.
Do you think they should have had Mr. Miyagi as Games Master instead of Patrick McNee?
Yeah, it would have been.
Patrick Moore, sorry.
Patrick McNee would have been even better. What a combination.
So Mr. Miyagi, sort of big floating Mr. Miyagi head. Oh, when you play Crystal Castles, you must rotate. Yes. Rotate off, rotate on.
And then you go
for that trackball.
I'm trying to do it, Mr. Miyagi, but work. Crane kick. That's it. There is no defense for that. It's just anyone. You can't. If you're moaning too much, you get crane kicked out the room. That's it. You're done.
Oh god, Mr. Miyagi video game tips. That should be done, and it's way more interesting than Super Zax off.
Yes, it is. It is Super Zax off. Goodbye, Super Zax off.
Yeah, bye. Okay, so after that travesty, it doesn't get better.
No,
at least in my opinion. I don't know what you thought.
No, it doesn't.
So it's a cheaper turd, but it's still whatever. And the next game we look at is Shoot 'Em Up, not the film with Clive Owen.
Yes,
what's his face?
Wouldn't that have been an interesting game?
But a game that was 30 years before that, or 20 years before that, whenever Shoot 'Em Up came up. So this is Shoot 'Em Up. Graham, tell us about Shoot 'Em Up.
So, if Sci-Fi 9 had a child with Buck Rogers, you would have Shoot 'Em Up. Because it's a crap combination of two crap games. So you get all of the crapness of a landscape zooming towards you in stroboscopic vision that makes your eyeballs itch, and all of the face-on shooting that we've seen before in games like Sci-Fi 9. So insert crap graphics, floating about, trying to shoot them endlessly, repeat, with really weird classical music to open it up. Just strange. I thought it was rubbish. It was just crap. And the price for this is outrageous. This would be bad value at $1.99. So was it $6.95 for this? People
it was,
paid back then. Awful. awful, awful. And I have no further real thoughts on it. There's not a lot to it. You are just shooting stuff endlessly, and it's that view that you hate, AD. It's that kind of face-on view that we had with was it Star Force or one of those? They're one of those, those classic epics to twin pack. It's of that ilk, Aid. It's of that ilk. It's the same exact problem, the same way. Only this one has stroboscopic scrolling, so it's meant to feel like you're zooming towards this thing in the distance. It doesn't know. It's just stripy. Just really fast stripy things, and after a while you find your eyes starting to twitch a bit because it starts, you feel your big blinks coming on. And these games they increase their difficulty by becoming more stroboscopic. I imagine eventually, just before you have a seizure, you probably want to turn it off. Either that, or you just go, no, this is like me. Like me, I was like, no, I've had enough of these rubbish games like that. No. Are there any good ones like that apart from that one beachhead bit or Space Harrier? But even the conversion of Space Harrier, when we get to that, it's not what you call great. So
no, I think that the problem with this, there are good 3D into the game. I mean, but yeah, we'll come to them. Things like Cosmic Causeway.
That was my thought on it. I thought it was just rubbish. But what did you think?
Pond Scum, yeah. I always like to. I play these games and then I don't look at my notes. I make my notes at the point when I play them, sort of thing. And I like to come back to them and read them, and I kind of forget what I've written because we review quite a lot. And I like to sort of gain the tone of what I thought about this from my notes. And I've hated the title screen as well. There's one comment in there. There's a lot of. I'm not happy with this game. My first word is just awful. I put the first level has you shooting Sir Clive Sinclair.
Yeah.
Because it did look like Sir Clive Sinclair, which is just his head repeatedly floating around. Yeah. The second was some kind of ducks or something flying across. The third was some ghosts. At that point, I gave up. Awful into the screen shooter, terrible visuals and controls and everything. And I couldn't figure out, you have usable sort of supplies at the bottom, so you need to fuel, you need ammo, or you need shields or whatever. And across the bottom of the screen will float a fuel tank every now and again, and will float a missile.
Yeah.
You have to shoot these to restock your fuel or restock your ammo, and that's fine. That's not a bad mechanic. I quite like that. Except problem is you got your crosshair on screen and you're sort of scrolling it left and right. When a missile comes across the bottom and you start moving down towards it, it speeds up and moves away from you. It moves away faster than you can catch it up.
Yep.
Therefore, you waste bullets trying to shoot it, which is the whole point of trying to shoot the missile, because you need bullets. And then when I did try and shoot one, I didn't get any bullets anyway. This is a really, an awful everything. It's not worth anyone's time. It's frustrating. It makes no sense. I couldn't tell why I was getting shot at points. I couldn't tell what I was shooting. Sometimes my bullets would hit. Sometimes they wouldn't. I wonder why we do this sometimes.
Yeah, I despair.
It's one of those games.
Yeah, that's just, I had flashbacks. I start getting flashbacks when I'm playing these games. So, I'm sat there thinking, not only have I seen this before, but I'm having the same nightmares because they're just mostly uncontrollable. If they're not uncontrollable, they make no sense. If they don't make any sense, then the visuals are so bizarre to the least. Like you say, you've got, I think it was human faces floated about. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what they were. You've got a sense of direction, I suppose. That's the best you can say about this game. But it's one of those games that had good instructions because that's all you can really say about it. Great instructions. You knew exactly what you needed to do. I'm not sure you did. I tried to follow the instructions as best I could and it made no sense, but what can you do? No, shoot 'em up is not good.
No. Shoot them down.
Yeah, switch it off.
All right, so that's it. So 4 games, a good one lifted by music, a decent bite game, and then 2 crap shooters. So let's move on. So, okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at music in October 1985, so stay with us. All right, welcome back. So, music in October 1985. Let's have a look at what was going on in the pop charts in the UK. So, we'd done something wrong this month because we were punished because number 1 single all month was The Power of Love by Jennifer Rush.
Power ballad.
Now, I like The Power of Love by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yes.
And my favourite band is Rush. So, but you put them two together in this format and it's just all bad. This was everywhere, wasn't it? Everywhere.
It was ubiquitous. It was like rain in the bloody UK. Everywhere you went, you heard this song. Dirgy, just, it is what it is, right? It's one of those big power ballads. And yet, there was 2 or 3 songs around that time, similar titles. The Power of Love by, like you say, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, simply much better than this rubbish. And also, didn't Huey Lewis in the News have something similar?
Oh, The That's the power of love.
Yes. Exactly. So they had power. So there was a power of love off.
Sorry.
For some reason, in the UK, Jennifer Rush was popular. I just remember it being everywhere. I think my mum might have bought that. So.
It was a mum's song.
Yeah.
One of our friends who I used to hang around with at this point in time, sort of thing. His mum played this religiously every time I was around there. It was like, oh God, tell her to turn it off, please.
Yeah, it's got that kind of sort of very powerful female singer vibe, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of that. What was it, Barbara Dickinson, Elaine Page one?
Oh,
I know him so
Chess,
well.
Yeah, from the musical Chess, which is crap, by the way. Just going to put that out there, but there you go.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, we hate it.
It's not about chess at all, just so you know. It's nothing about it. I think that would be better if it was a musical about the game of chess. I am the king and you are the queen and all that kind of thing. Writes itself. It's not about angry women.
That move is illegal. You can't move the knight that way.
Pass the bishop. Anyway, I don't know you'd pass the bishop.
We're castling now.
That's my little chess knowledge completely explored. I don't know from the names of the fancy moves.
To be fair, the slow one would be called en passant. So that would be the slow game. En passant.
But yeah, just derivative, mushy, gushy. Who was Jennifer Rush anyway? Where the hell did she come from? And more importantly, where did she go? It took about one hit wonder. Know. She came, she spat this song all over the UK for a month and then just ran off. I suspect probably very rich at the end of it, but there you go. Well, she could sing. No disrespect to the woman, she could definitely sing and hit all the right notes, just not the notes I enjoy, but there you go.
No, we don't like Power Love. It's about. I'm not saying it's a bad song, it's just not for us, is it?
No, there was a bit of wasn't there a time when these kind of things there was a few of them one after another, but I might be getting this mixed up with when Celine Dion released seemingly endless amounts of power ballads. And,
I think that was a bit later.
Wasn't Bonnie Tyler around this time with Total Eclipse of the Arse?
Don't knock Bonnie Tyler. Don't put Bonnie Tyler in the same category as Jennifer Rush.
I bet they power note each other. So Jennifer Rush and Bonnie Tyler have a power note off. So who can hold the note the most powerful and the longest? And then that guy from what's his name, Bill Withers or whatever, it comes along and just holds a note for 2 years continuously. When
you said that, from somewhere in my head, I thought the guy from Right Said Fred for some reason. I don't know why.
I'd like to.
I often think about
that guy.
Richard Fairbrass.
Yeah, Richard Fairbrass sings "The Power of Love" by Jennifer Rush. I am your lady. I'm too good. I'm not going to do it. But anyway, no more. There's no more bizarre impersonations.
No, right. That's the power of love. It was number one all month, and we had to live through that.
We survived it though, thank God.
And there was nothing. This isn't like you just go to Spotify and listen to someone else. It was just everywhere on everything.
Yep. It was.
Right, so our number one albums, we've spoken about a couple of these before, so we'll move on. But the number one albums were 4, I think one each week. We had Like a Virgin from Madonna.
Good.
Great album. Hounds of Love from Kate Bush.
Excellent.
Good. We had Love Songs from George Benson.
Greasy Junior. Real greasy.
I know absolutely nothing about love songs from George Benson. I couldn't tell you a single thing. And I didn't even go look at any information for this podcast because I was like, I don't want to know. I don't care. It was just a number one album that I have no interest in spoiling my brain with.
No.
So he was number one. However, the one came after that was Once Upon a Time by Simple Minds. Were you a Simple Minds fan?
No, I wasn't at the time. I've come to like one or two of their songs in the time since, but they seem to be a band that is, I wouldn't say misunderstood, because that's wrong, but they always people seem to parody them a lot for that one big song that they had, obviously, and yet they've actually got quite a lot of good songs aside from that one that everyone knows. I'm not going to say it, but
I put Simple Minds. To me, Simple Minds are one of those mid-80s songs, mid-80s bands, that saw in the era of the bland bands that we had loads of in the late 80s. Things like Curiosity Killed the Cat and Johnny Hates Jazz, and Fine Young Cannibals. And Deacon Blues.
Yeah.
This, you had some of these early on, and Simple Minds I always put in that bracket. They're just a bit bland. They had 2 good songs, Alive and Kick It, which will come out this year, and obviously Don't You Forget About Me. But even then, they didn't want to release Don't You Forget About Me, and they were, it wasn't their song.
That's correct, of course.
From what I understand, I don't believe it was their song.
They had a stupid logo as well, didn't they, Simple Minds, where they took the I and merged it into the M, so it was Smipplemans, it looked like, when you looked at the logo.
Smipple.
Smipple. Yeah, if you go back and look at the Simple Minds logo, it looks like Smipplemans because the I forms the first part of the M and the first part of the N in mind, so it looks like Smipplemans.
Smipplemans.
Yep,
I'll have a look at that.
I do. Go logo hunting and you'll see what I mean.
Oh, the life I lead.
Well, just, you know what? If you were a Simple Minds fan and he was walking around with that T-shirt on, people are going to look at you and go, I wonder why he's got Smipplemans written on his T-shirt.
Smipplemans.
Maybe it's because he is of a simple mind. But,
maybe. Do they make sweet?
Smipples.
Smipplemans.
Get a Smipplemans.
They sound like they should be some German sweet.
Smipplemans made in Germany. From yogurt.
Your accents get no better.
No, well, I'm trying not to do deliberately stereotypical accents by simply not doing them very well at all. It's a good thing, I think. That's
fair enough then.
So yeah, Simple Minds, okay. Yeah.
Simple Minds will come up again because the singles we're looking at, we had a rash of singles on the first Monday of the month, or the first whatever it is of the month, the 6th of October. We had Alive and Kicking from Simple Minds in at number 12. Obviously on the back of, that coming out with the album would have been a big double whammy, I guess.
Yeah.
And I imagine Alive and Kicking was, number one, big single. Alive and Kicking is a good song. I do actually like that one.
Is it from a film? Is either of those from a film or something?
I think if you think of every 80s song that you like and that was pretty popular, I'm going to guarantee it's in a film from the mid-1980s.
Yeah. Well,
they all were. Every single one was. Yeah, all of them.
Jenny John Hughes movie around that time, right? So.
It probably is somewhere in there.
Right.
We had Gambler from Madonna at number 20.
Yeah, I don't even remember that.
It's not the Kenny Loggins cover, I don't think. Not Kenny Loggins. Kenny Rogers. Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Loggins.
Kenny Loggins is Gambler. Gambler! You don't have to sing it like that.
Does he sing that way? I don't remember him singing like that. I remember, but...
He's old now.
Well, yeah, old and clearly, bitonal by the sound of it.
Clearly in need of some Smipplemans for his bad throat.
Yeah, get some supplements.
Supplements.
You need to
cure your
throat there. You need to be seen with Mr. Loggins. Get some of these lozenges. Loggins lozenges. He missed out on a major branding opportunity there to brand his own lozenges. The Kenny Loggins lozenge. People would have bought them. Be footloose and throat fancy free.
Anyway. We had the Miami Vice theme from Jan Hammer.
People went mad for that.
Jan Hammer.
Didn't they? People went mad for it. It was remember the videos for it? Oh, my gosh.
There was a spate of these kind of synthy tunes, weren't there, in the mid-80s coming from, soundtracks. Because obviously we've spoken before about Axel F, and now we've got Jan Hammer's Miami Vice theme.
It was good though, mate, the Miami Vice theme.
Yeah, it was sort of thing. A particular one for me, I've already mentioned them sort of thing, but The Big Money from Rush was released.
Wow.
Number 51. This was off their Power Windows album. It was the first track on that. I'm not going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about this or Rush sort of thing. I could do, but I'm going to save us all that. In fact, I will do, and Graham can just edit it. I'm just going to make him listen to it. But no, I won't do that.
So that was The Big Money there, interesting.
Absolutely,
yeah. I agree with you. It's really good, yeah. Anyway, on to the next one.
The next one, a very popular tune from the mid-80s, still to this day, is Road to Nowhere from Talking Heads.
I love that track.
Went in at number 66. Yeah, it is a great tune, isn't it? Let's face it. Talking Heads were fabulous.
Yeah.
Quirky, eclectic, unusual. Just a really, really interesting band that did interesting stuff. And
unusual. The dwarfs nobody wanted.
Where's QWERTY? Where's QWERTY? The keyboard dwarf. No one wants him. What words can you write? I can do try, or tray, or root. Or yet.
But they were indeed quirky, you're right. But that wasn't actually their best song. And She Was the best one by them. But that's a good one all the same. Number 66. I mean, he got higher than that, though, I think.
It did, yeah. This is where I've just picked them up. All these were released on the same day. And then we had...
right.
Yeah, so I've not tracked them. I don't care where they ended up. Honestly, right. I thought this day was quite interesting for these singles that all came out the same day.
It's a mad old mix,
and then we had A Good Heart from Fergal Sharkey, number 72.
Old Warble Sharky.
Absolutely, but was he under? He was the undertones.
Yes, that's what's alarming about it. Really, is that he went from Teenage Kicks to A Good Heart. These days, is hard to find, and you got to do the kind of sound. So, I can't do it.
But the thing is, again, Fergal Sharkey turned into one of those bland core stuff from the middle of the 80s.
Did crazy, really? Yeah, because you've got what's his name? Who's the guy? What's his name? We'll come across him at some point. I can't remember his name, but
this makes for good radio.
It's good. Yeah, what's his name? That guy, I want to say.
Him.
I want to say Paul Young. So Paul Young,
God,
he was another one that came out with all this kind of, this kind of stuff. And you're right, they do feature in movies. Half of these, with the exception of probably Road to Nowhere and Rush.
I'm sure Road to Nowhere is in a film. I
think it's in the Talking Heads film because he made a film, didn't he? So it's probably in that.
Oh, he did, yes. So that was a crazy day. That was the 6th, and that was the only day I really sort of found anything of note for October. But that's a big series of releases for one thing or another.
Yeah.
But obviously all overshadowed by the power of love.
Yep.
Albums. Did we have any good albums? Well, Mid-Jaw, on the 13th of October, we had a few albums released. The Gift by Mid-Jaw. So we've spoken about Mid-Jaw. We've sort of conceded we're not particularly big fans.
And I see his name looks like he's got the letters joined together when he ain't.
No.
So Simple Mints and Mid-Jaw could all be the same band because they've probably got some kind of vowel deficiency going on at that time.
If you have a sore throat, then you need Simple Mints. But if you need to clear the guitar from out of your nose, then you need to use a stronger brand, Mid-Jaw.
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 Bless him.
If you say it all as one word, then
Mid-Jaw.
you can, it'd be Mid-Jaw.
Is it Midge or you? How is that surname actually said? Is that Mid-Jaw? Mid-Jaw.
Yeah.
What is that a stage name or is he from Czechoslovakia or something?
He's Scottish.
Well, that explains his name then.
They're a Scottish band, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think
Ultravox.
Yeah, Midge. I didn't know
Ultravox
Midge.
are Scottish.
He must be short for something. Probably short for Jonathan.
There's an obvious joke there, but I want to say it. Love Songs by George Benson. Was came in at number 5 on this, and then the following week went to number 1. What was going on?
Those are some love songs.
Absolutely, Anyway, but more importantly to me, and I will talk about this. I don't know if you're a big fan, but Suzanne Vega released her on this debut album, Suzanne Vega, and it went in at number 63 on the 13th of October. Now I am a huge fan of Suzanne Vega, always have been, and that first album is a particular favourite of hers. It's a beautiful, beautiful album. A lot of it's quite a cappella, really stripped back and laid bare sort of thing, and it's just she's got a really good way with lyrics, and I'm a huge fan. If I'm going to recommend an album, go listen to Suzanne Vega. Because she's really good. Were you ever a fan? Do you like her?
She's all right. She's certainly one of the sort of solo female artists that you could rely on to produce some really good stuff. I actually honestly can't say I've listened to a lot of Suzanne Vega output. But the stuff I've heard, as long as with all the cliche stuff that everyone's heard, like Tom's Down and stuff, but the other stuff that I've heard, I've never disliked a Suzanne Vega track. In a similar way to whenever I haven't heard everything by Kate Bush, but the stuff I've heard is pretty good.
Yeah, as you said, yeah.
They occupy a certain space, and Suzanne Vega seems to sort of occupy that kind of, soul-y but sort of folky kind of mixture, and there's a lot of good stuff going on in there. And it's always better than Enya, which I suppose is kind of the, if you go to the end of that awful rainbow, you get, if you start one side
Get
of
back,
the track.
Satan!
Well, the thing is, at least Suzanne Vega sings in words and not just in sort of, adjective sounds. But I think the sadness with Suzanne Vega is that there is some brilliance in there, I have to say. The sadness is that she became famous for a song which is probably not the best one that she ever did. So, the world will remember her for
Tom's Diner, off second album,
which isn't the greatest song Suzanne Vega ever did. I think she would probably be the first person to say that, especially if you compare it to some of the other tracks that are out there. So, that said, geniuses can't pick their best moments, can they?
No, I mean, if you've not listened to much of her sort of thing, and this is a recommendation to something, go listen to the first album. It's not that long. It's it's quite short. It's 10 tracks. It's nice and compact. None of the tracks stay out there welcome. It's quite folky and laid back sort of thing. But there's some amazing tracks in there, like Marlene on the Wall, Queen and the Soldier, A Small Blue Thing. It's a stunning album sort of thing, because I think I heard this when I was about 14, 15, and for a 14, 15-year-old me, this was a very unusual album to sort of gravitate towards, and I just loved it, and I've loved it ever since. I think it's a brilliant piece.
She's got one of those really lovely voices, though, hasn't she? She's got that kind of really softly spoken, singy voice. Really nice and totally different vibe. But when you do hear a really good vocalist like that singing in that kind of gentle sort of tonal way, it's just some of the tracks she sings do send sort of shivers down your spine because of that. I think it's a kind of a magic about it. And like you say,
Luca is another one you probably know.
Yes, I was going to say there's some that everyone remembers those ones and has heard those probably, and yet there's a lot more songs out there that perhaps are less famous, but actually a lot better, I'm sure. I have not explored the entirety of Suzanne Vega's back catalogue.
No, it's good.
So
it's good.
Something I would like to do, I think. I might have to do that.
So there you go. That's me waxing lyrical about Suzanne Vega. And not about Rush.
Or George Benson.
Well, I could have done about George Benson, but that sentence is going to go nowhere because I couldn't.
I'm going to see if I can find a sample of George Benson and just put it in there where he goes, oh, yeah.
I bet he does. I bet that's like the entire album.
Hot loving. Oh, yeah.
Well, why do you think he sounds like Barry White?
I don't know. He's got a name like George Benson. I bet he doesn't. I bet he's one of those sort of warbly singers.
And to be fair, his album is called Love Song, so I'm not expecting like power ballad.
I'm going to have to look it up and find a George Benson song anyway and see what it's like.
Don't do it. All right, do it in a bit. Right, there we go. That's the music. So that's music for October 1985. Some good stuff, but we were tortured by Jennifer Rush with The Power of Love. Welcome back. That was music. Let's move back to games. So our first game for this section is the highest rated game in this issue of Zapped. There is no gold medal. This came close with 95%. And that game is Nodes of Yesod. So Graham, what did you think to Nodes of Yesod?
Nodes of Yesod is quite an interesting game. Let's just give you a quick rundown because there's a little bit of stuff to do in this. And you'll guess what kind of game it is as I explain it. No doubt about that. So you play Charlie Fotherington Groons in this game.
You do?
Yes, you do. Astronaut extraordinaire, and you're on the moon's surface. The idea of the game is you've got a lot of caverns below the moon's surface. You've got to retrieve 8 alchems, I believe they're called, or alchems, jewels, gems anyway, which look a bit like crystals. And in order to find a monolith, very 2001 monolith, and then that's the end of the game. You win. In the context of the game, you have to then sort of go find a little mole creature that you can help to chew through walls and things. Once you've got that, you can explore the various caves, and there's all sorts of monsters and creatures inside there. Some of them don't necessarily kill you because there's two kinds. There's kind of harmful or dead killer and non-killer, I guess. And the killer ones kind of zap your strength and eventually you kind of lose your strength. And the other ones can sort of send you bouncing around, which make it difficult to navigate the terrain because, as I say, in this game, you've got a bit of moon gravity, so you can jump a bit higher and you can jumping takes a bit longer and you can do kind of sort of somersaulty, forward rolly type jumps onto things. So the game is essentially explore the caves, climb the platforms, find the gems, find the monolith, out you go. Boom. Now, there are also a little, as an aside, there are characters in there that can take your alchems off you. I think it's possibly the most annoying game mechanic ever invented. So, because these alchems are actually hard to get, they're in gnarly places, and so you've got to navigate in this game, and I'll come to this in a minute. Navigating this game is a pain in the ass. So, when you do finally get a gem, it's kind of a celebratory moment, only to then get tapped by one of these muggy astronaut things. They look a bit like an astronaut with a kind of a jetpack on. But when they touch you, they totally steal one of your alchems, meaning you've got to go and find it again. If that doesn't define this game as being a pain in the backside, I don't know what it is. So graphically, quite nice to look at. Main sprite, really well defined, really nice. This is made by what they're called, Odin computer graphics team. Remember the Sinclair Spectrum version, this had speech. So this was perhaps a game where the Sinclair Spectrum version was a little bit better maybe than the Commodore 64. But the long and the short of it was that you wandered around the various caves, jumping on the little platforms, getting the gems, avoiding the monsters, etc., etc. A couple of problems with the game. So firstly, the jump mechanic is a bit weird, and it can get, because it's flick screen, it can get really, really annoying if you're trying to, because some of the platforms you need to jump off screen to jump back on screen to so you've got to remember where the things were on the previous screen because you've got to kind of jump the platforms. If you fall too far, you just bizarrely turn into like a skeleton and die, and you've got a certain amount of lives. So you can't fall too far, even though it's moon gravity, which means it doesn't matter. Let's just elide all the rules. So you've got to try and navigate your way. And navigating your way around those various hazards, which is mainly just platforms and things to not bump into and stuff, can get really tiresome when you're trying to think about where things are in context of the previous screen you were on. And I found that started to really get on my nerves after a while, because I found that I was jumping where I didn't want to go. I kept falling off platforms uncontrollably, which was really, really annoying. I did manage to get 4 of the alchems, and then I got one taken off me, which made me scream an expletive so loud pigeons attacked each other. I'm pretty sure of that. I just found that as a game, there was a lot of good game in there, kind of trapped in some controls that just felt a little bit clunky. The look and feel of the game was nice, and it had kind of a weird, peaceful, but kind of doomy feeler, but not Doom as in the video game Doom. I mean, Doom as in there's kind of a sort of a weird sense of sort of Doom about the game. It feels a bit bleak, and I think it's because it's quite sparse and because there's just platforms and stuff, and it's a moon sort of caves. But we said it way back in episode 1, I think maybe even episode 0, about games in caves. Well, there's a game in caves. And so, is it good? It's definitely playable, and I think if you persevered with it, you could probably get a lot out of it. You might be able to master that control system in the end and get more out of it. And I did get better at it, but I still found that, thinking 2 or 3 screens about where the platforms were became quite tiresome. And as soon as I started getting mugged by these creatures that stole my alchems, well, it was like getting, when you lose something on eBay, that kind of glove slap anger that you get when when you're outbid at the last second on eBay. I got that kind of anger out of this. So I had to turn it off before it was, for me, it was the Nodes of Yesod or the Yeses of Nosod. But either way, I found it just a little bit graphically great. Orally, there's not much to write home about, but it's okay. It's nothing bad about the game design other than that control system and the flick screeniness of it. So it just becomes clunky. But other than that, it was okay. It's kind of sizzler material, though. Definitely not gold. What do you think?
I remember playing this a fair bit back when it came out. I never really got into it. I could never quite click with it. I don't know if just didn't know what I was doing. I think you're right. There's a certain type of atmosphere to it that's a bit slower than normal. So it's got a pace to it that isn't your sprinting, running around. It's not certainly not your Monty on the run type space. This is a more sedate, shall we say? And that fits because you're on the moon, so things don't move very fast on the moon. And it's like we said, it's another one of those go around flick screen thing. But I agree completely with that control comments, the comments you made about the controls. It feels weird sort of thing because when you first jump, you're thinking that platform is too high and I can't get on top of it. And when you roll onto it for the first time, you're thinking that's quite nice. That's a really nice little thing because you kind of roll up and onto it. The problem with it sort of thing is a lot of the time the platforms are too narrow for you to finish the roll, and you just roll off the other side.
Yeah.
So then you have to then trigger that. Usually that might take you into some monsters. That might take you into one of the killable monsters that's walking along the floor, which can range from a big slug to a kind of weird yak type Alf. Something that looked like Alf was wandering around. There was a chicken type thing. There was slugs. There was all kinds of weird stuff. And that was quite annoying because there was one bit where it was flames. There was one bit where I just got bounced between two creatures and then bounced off screen and killed. And it's like I couldn't do anything. I could do nothing to sort of right this. And I was like, I don't mind dying when it's my fault. I hate dying when the game has, it's a problem with the game by putting two enemies in a certain way that should have been playtested and started. Oh, if you fall there, hit there, you're going to die. Let's move the enemies apart so that won't happen, or not put one there because it's quite early in the game. This is it's not welcoming. I like the concept. I like grabbing the mole. I thought it was quite interesting, then bringing the mole out when you're at the ground and using him to sort of kill off the creatures and then allowing you to explore. What I didn't like was that, as you said, having to jump off screen to then jump back on screen, but going off screen and coming back on screen would respawn the spawning enemies. Yeah, was really frustrating after I killed them all off. I felt that was just like, I've got to do that again. There are so those kind of issues bugged the hell out of me. It was like what I said previously about Entombed. These constantly respawning stuff. This would have been much better again if it was just those creatures rambling about, just the ones that killed you, not the spawning stuff. Yeah, they don't add anything to the game because you can kill them with your mole quite quickly and quite easily. They're not a challenge. They don't do anything. And when you do flow into them, you go through and you may lose some health. But that's not the challenge of this. The challenge should have been creatures moving around that you had to avoid. I like the exploration part. I like using your mole to dig through walls. And when you figure that out and you get to some sort of deeper caverns, and there's a nice sort of visual change with the caverns and the rocks and all that kind of stuff. And there's some nice bits. There's a bit where did you fall down the really long hole and he was pinwheeling and I was like, oh, I'm going to die. And then he didn't die. But then falling down a much short space, you turn into a skeleton. Yeah, there's kind of the incongruities like that. I couldn't quite figure out. I didn't really know what the gravity sticks were for. I would plant one every now and again I would sit down, but I couldn't quite figure out why. Something about getting your health back or something. I don't know. I didn't know whether I was triggering that somehow, or there is a lot to like this, and it's kind of like an early Metroid style game in its feel. Going around caverns.
It has an odd vibe about it, I have to say.
Yeah, so around this time, sort of thing, 1980. When was the first Metroid game? Was it 88? Around about this time. Maybe this year, the year after, sort of thing. So your first Metroid game on the NES, and it is a similar sort of style in not the fact that you're getting your power ups and things like that and going through, but the way you're exploring stuff and digging through holes. So like Metroid's bombs, and you're blowing holes in the walls to get your morph ball through and things like that. There is some similarities in that these kind of things were being developed sort of at the same kind of time. It's visually very nice. The animation is very nice, but again, it's like that thing. It's gone to the impossible mission school of jumping for some reason. I don't know why. Why would you somersault on the moon? The whole point is there's very little gravity. Did you ever see Neil Armstrong somersault? They just bounded around, and I'm doing it on camera now, so you can see. But they just bounded. They could have, but they didn't. I imagine bounding around in that kind of suit would be annoying.
Well, I'm still mystified why a space mole wouldn't actually have any of the effects of gravity, but you do. So, but there you go. What do I know?
Well, it's acclimatized itself.
It's a game, isn't it? It's just for laughs.
It's got very, very hollow bones. But, I can see why they liked it. It is a really good example of this kind of flick screen, what they called an aardvark, an arcade adventure. I did like the music. I have to say the in-game music as it burbled along in the background was moody and pleasant. And I get what you're saying about there's some sort of, a quite moribund, quite morose feel to the whole thing, which is unusual. We've said this about very few games that sort of do actually create an atmosphere, and this does manage to pull that off, and that's quite good. But yeah, I think there is a sequel in there, Ark of Yesod.
Yes,
I don't know whether that actually does things better or not, but it's
more of the same, I think.
I think so, but hopefully maybe they've sort of learned from that flick screen on, flick screen off, Mr. Miyagi style type thing again, which hopefully that they get better at. But that for me was the killer, because I didn't feel like I was always in control, and that bugged the hell out of me.
No.
And it's a bit of a killer for something like a game like this. But if you do put the time and effort in, if you do learn to sort of acclimatise to that, I think there's a lot to like here. I think you could get quite a lot out of this game.
Was there any purpose in that game for the standing jump? Because you could standing jump quite high, but you couldn't actually move when you stood standing jump. So, and you can't, because if you try and standing jump underneath a platform, you hit it, so you can't go anywhere. So I'm guessing there must be things to reach for later in the game or something. I never found any reason to have that, but there you go.
The only thing I could think of sort of thing was if you're on a platform near the top of the screen, to maybe jump up and see what was on the next screen without fear of like moving. So you could jump up, memory. See what was on there and then which way you had to go, and then you drop back down. And then well, of course, respawn your enemies. That goes without saying. Yeah, but that's the only reason I can think of it. It's good. It is good. You will get something out of this if you do play it, I think. But you do fight those controls.
Yeah, I played it for a while, I have to say. I stuck at it for a bit. I wanted to... It was a game that, like you, I never got into it originally. I had a friend who had the Spectrum version, and he raved about it. He was absolutely well into it, So come round to my house and play Nodes of Yesod. You've got to see this game. It's amazing. It's got speech. It's got this. It's got that. It's got this. And, it really sold it to me. And when I got there, I was like... Yeah, the speech is all right, as long as you can plug your Spectrum into a tape recorder and make the sound come out of it, something it sounded like. But
it's not a spectator game. It's not one for a spectator.
No,
this game.
He was just because the graphics are quite good.
Yes, they are.
But for a Commodore 64, probably not that good because they're not that colourful. It does look a little bit like a Spectrum game on a Commodore 64 without the colour clash or anything. I get that, but that kind of high-resi spritiness about it, and it's got that. Yeah, kind of
there
vibe.
Is that. I do think we spoke about in episode 1, we spoke about Turn and Nog, which was clearly just straight Spectrum visuals.
Yeah.
And Everyone's a Wally. It was straight Spectrum visuals. This did have, especially when you got to the more crystally cave.
Yeah,
that definitely looked a lot better. And I think that some time and effort had gone into the use of the extra colours and the extra stuff that the Commodore 64 could do.
Graphically, it was nice, yeah.
But the main sprite, suffers from it's a high-res single-colour sprite.
Yeah, exactly. But I just, like I say, it was never a game that really... I wasn't going to be running to the shops when I read that Nodes of Yesod was coming out in a similar way to when I heard that Last Ninja was coming out or something like that. These streets apart in terms of the appeal it had to me. I'm just not a nodie. That's what they call Nodes of Yesod fans, apparently. Nodies.
Nodies.
Yeah,
Nodies.
I'm not a nodie.
No,
nodie.
But yeah, play it. It's good. It is good. You will probably get some out, but the controls will fight you.
Yes, they will.
Yes, so that was Nodes of Yesod. Let's move on. We've got 3 more games in this section. Obviously, Nodes of Yesod is the best of them. It was the best in the thing, and we probably agree, actually. So our next game is Rocket Roger. Not an order, but so this is what was the game on the BBC? Where you were flying around, was it Citadel or Repton or something, or
neither of those?
There was one where you were a character from the side and you were flying around. I can't remember. No, Repton was the sort of weird bug creature, wasn't it?
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Citadel was a little guy wandering around the Citadel.
There was one where you would fly. Basically, this is essentially what this is. It's like something like you control a guy like Thrust-like, who has a jetpack, and that jetpack is his only way of moving. Well, you can walk left and right sort of thing, but don't, because this is the most explosive man in the history of anything, who, upon touching an incline, will just explode into pieces. So don't touch any inclines at all. So you play the titular Rocket Roger, and you must traverse caverns picking up glowing things. That's it. You use your jetpack to thrust yourself along, thrust yourself up and try and land on the, on flat land, because should you land on anything that's greater than 2 degrees, you're dead, and you don't want that. You just explode. And an example of this is the game starts you off, you slide down a slide, and you walk forward a little bit, and there's just a bit of an incline in front of you. It's like a small hillock that's not as tall as you, but as soon as you touch it, you explode. I don't know. I don't know why you would make these choices when making a game. So it's quite unpleasant and it's quite annoying. It's it's a thruster type game. It's it's the gravitar. Is it gravitar thrust, that kind of thing where you've got physics and you're thrusting upwards to try and keep yourself afloat and trying to control it by moving left and right while you're thrusting upwards and instead of say thrusting upwards. I've not got much to say about this. It's rudimentary visuals, sound. It's just it's disappointing. I was surprised this got 82% in the magazine because I don't know what was going on here, because this just felt to me like a bit of a throwback, like an attempt at doing something, but with some pretty obvious flaws that made traversing and playing this game more painful than it really should have been. I don't know whether you got more out of it than me. I don't know. Did you?
No. I have to say I kind of got the same vibe. Let me just say, by the way, that this game's got a really nice typeface in it. Now, I'm a big fan of game typefaces, as well. I do have a book of arcade typefaces and game typefaces and stuff. I'm well into that. So this has got a great typeface. Just want to say that aside, I thought the game was a bit too explodey. If you walk a bit, explode. You try and fly, explode. You try and shoot something, explode. And I just found that just the controls were just meant the game was unenjoyable. And I felt like it had a lot of game to offer as well. Because if you get over the sort of terrain, if you can get that far, you can actually go into the bowels of the planet and there's like sort of all sorts of other stuff going on underneath there. So there's doubtless, there's tons of stuff to do. And in a similar way to Nodes of Yesod, you've got to fly around collecting stuff, right? So you got to collect these rocks, gems, whatever they are, fuel things, in order to actually get enough fuel for your spaceship to get off the planet. That's the plan, to escape. So there's over 30 zones, it says in the blurb of this. There's 30 zones to explore, which means there's just 29 things you're not going to see, actually. Because you're never going to get really off zone 1. I don't think I got that far into it before I was just running out of lives at a rate of knots. And I find my perseverance is lacking for games that just arbitrarily kill me all the time. I'm like, you've got to spend time in a game to get good at it, and that means not dying every time you do anything, because it just becomes frustrating and endless after that, and you think, you know what, I'm just going to switch this off because I'm tired of running into the tiniest little rock detail and exploding or dying or whatever. And no, it just, graphically it was all right, but I just found games where you die lots and lots and lots and lots and lots before you even get anywhere, you're either going to have to persevere with it and get better, or you're going to switch it off like I did and go, eh. So I found it just a bit tedious is the word I would use for that. Tedious.
Yeah. It is, isn't it? I can't recommend this in any way, shape, or form. It just
no.
I didn't get on with it, and maybe there is more game there, and maybe back in the day you would have been a bit more leeway with it, and you'd play it and get to those later stages. But now, no. I see what you say about the typeface. Bottom heavy is that typeface, isn't it?
Yeah,
is that what you call it? Yeah, it's
typeface. Someone's clearly made their own typeface, and I wholeheartedly approve of that. So it's kind of a squishy vibe, and it's good. I know I do approve of that. Everything else is a little bit, and half the screen is taken up with the typeface as well. By the way,
the game on the BBC I was trying to remember was Exile.
Right, not one I've heard of really.
Yeah, that was the one. If you look at screenshots of Exile, you'll go, oh, it's a jetpack man floating around, flying around caverns. Yeah, sounds similar. That was the one I was trying to think of. But yeah, I can't recommend this. I can't. I wouldn't say go play it.
No, and you'd need to, because you can, if you find the safe spots in the game, you can, it's almost sort of, when you die, you start from the safe spot, you don't start right from the beginning again. But they're few and far between. At least I couldn't find that many of them. I think I found one by accident more than anything else. So, like you say, I'd avoid it. If you're going to, don't play a game where you die this much, it's just because it gets dull very quickly to do that.
Yeah. Reminded me of that other stupid game we played, Whirly Nerd.
Yeah. Take out Rocket Roger, stick in Whirly Nerd. Same sort of idea. At least with Whirly Nerd, you could sort of float a little. This one, you kind of, it's got that horrible hovery, hover weight where you push the, you fly him up with his jetpack and then he's already dropping down to the ground, and you've got to kind of, it's got that Flappy Bird kind of methodology about it. Or Airwolf, yeah. Then there's two characters you're never going to find in the same space. Airwolf versus Flappy Bird. That would be the episode of Airwolf they never made. But I don't think it's going to end well for. It's not going to end well for the Flappy Bird. It's going to go in the rotors. He'd outmaneuver that Airwolf. Jan Michael Vincent can't handle that kind of gravity, even with those cheekbones.
Not with me tapping the screen, it wouldn't. That was terrible at that game. So yeah, Rocket Roger, don't play it. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Just walk away. Go full Mad Max in it. Just save me some gasoline.
I just need gasoline for my jetpack.
You're so selfish not sharing the gasoline. Walk away.
Stop it.
Good old Humongous. Humongous is good for laughs, isn't he? He's a good laugh.
Absolutely. Mr. Mongus.
Lord Humongous. Good old Lord. Game tips from Lord Humongous. Just walk away.
Is it one word or is it two? Is it Hugh Mongus?
His name's not Humongous. Although it should be now. Mr. Mongus, I presume. Hugh. Call me Hugh, please. Okay. It's just you are a large guy. I figured it's a very big guy, and you out for some reason you just dressed in hockey mask and pants. This is a business meeting for goodness sake, Mr. Mongus.
Mad Max has nothing to do with Rocket Roger. Let's move on.
It was more interesting.
It is more interesting.
Walk away. Just walk away.
Yes, and on that, yes. Let's move on. Weirdo. Okay. Right. What's up next? We've got a cheapie up next because the new ones have been full price. Over to you, Graham. Tell us all about Vortron.
Yeah, did I pick the short straws or what?
No, you got Nodes of Yesod.
Yeah, true. So Vortron. Okay. I think the thing in the middle is a planet. If basically you bounce around for some reason, it's kind of a shoot 'em up, and you're bouncing around the screen, shooting at things where there's a kind of ball under the screen. I think it's a planet. You're sort of flying towards the planet. I think that's meant to be kind of a Mad Planets, the arcade Mad Planets kind of vibe, sort of that Crazy Comets kind of vibe that comes later. So I think there's some kind of hint of that. I think so, and that was it. Kind of shoot the things because you sort of form out of 4 blobs when you first start the game, and they kind of piece themselves together. So you shooting those things, you're flying around, and it's kind of just mad shooting at stuff. But I don't understand why your character bounces. So you can stay still, but if you move, it starts bouncing around. There's bullets flying everywhere and enemies flying everywhere. And the bouncing just got so stupid, annoyingly, and pointless that it just became, is the aim to survive this? I don't know. So I just got so annoyed with it. I was like, no more of this. Games that have no point, with controls that are stupid, with an idea that's bound in kind of crazy where somebody obviously took a whole bag full of mushrooms, scoffed them intently, and they said, it'll be a great game. Let's just have something, all this stuff moving, and no point to it really. Just shoot at anything. And in the end, you end up with this piece of rubbish. And I just got frustrated with it in about 2 seconds and switched the damn thing off. Awful. But do you like it?
Oh, I loved it.
Best game I've ever played.
Absolutely. It's gone straight to my top list. No, it was awful. My notes, it's always good just to go back to your notes again, and it just says, what the hell is this? It feels like an idea that went through no playtesting, as being only able to fire into the center of the screen whilst enemies scroll downwards is both frustrating and counterintuitive. It's like 2 different games pushed to one. It's like you should be able to shoot upwards, but no, you shoot into the screen. So there's this kind of pseudo 3D-ish, but the enemies are just scrolling on a flat plate. Yeah. So essentially, my brain was like, I don't get this sort of thing. I wrote a destitute man's crazy comments. I said it looks rubbish too, and I have no idea what the sprites are, because the things that are scrolling down don't appear to bear any relation to the thing that you control, which is what should be happening on a game like this. Correct. But in this, they scroll down on a flat plane from the top, as if you're playing a vertical shoot 'em up, something like Galaxians or Space Invaders or any other kind of vertical Black Hawk or Trap or whatever. So you can't mix these 2 viewpoints, because as they're scrolling down from the top, you have to wait until they've come down a certain distance to get round behind them to shoot them, which is stupid.
Yep, so made no sense.
It didn't. It's a mash of 2 things, the 2 shoot 'em up genres that don't go together in any way, shape, or form. So I didn't get it. This is $2.99. I didn't get it. I just couldn't get my head around the thought process of this. It was incomprehensible to me.
Even at £3, I think you're pushing it, really. This was their Alligator's budget range, wasn't it? So this was Budgie. It was Alligator's budget range. And Alligator, by the way, the same people that made Shoot 'em Up, obviously not learning any lessons from that. They produced this, which just, I get tired of these kind of games really quickly anyway, but especially when they make no sense whatsoever and they've got, this kind of control system, just not for me.
I've got time for, into the screen, center screen, sort of moving around the edge, shoot 'em up when it's fast paced and quick and, pacey, and it's a nice, nice pace. But this is just, I don't get it. I don't get why someone would think, I can only move sprites downwards.
Yeah.
Don't do it then.
Yeah. And that when you die, fine. It restarts. There's that bit where you reform from the 4 pieces of whatever the hell it is, and it just adds a pause to the game, which makes it just breaks it up in a way that just fed up with this rubbish.
And also, what the hell kind of name is Vortron?
Well,
it's like a crap 80s alien name, isn't it? Voltron.
That is a crappy 80s sci-fi movie. I bet somewhere it's called Vortron.
Probably.
No, or maybe even earlier than that. Maybe it's, I don't know. Yeah, it's got that sort of horrible 80s sci-fi vibe about it, isn't it?
Everything about this is bad. We don't like this. Let's move on. And so, don't play Vortron. It is incomprehensible nonsense.
Vortron.
Or what would be better if this was the Vortrons, who were like the 4 tenors.
The 4 tops.
Yeah, the 4 tops, but the Vortrons. So they were like, no, I need them.
Yeah, they're just 4 random computer programs who got together and formed some kind of sort of synth-based quartet called the Vortrons.
Yeah, that'd be way better.
That's essentially what you've described as Kraftwerk.
Oh yeah, they should have been called Vortrons.
They probably are somewhere. Maybe they're called Vortron. No, we are Vortron, not Kraftwerk. Oh, okay. Well, you all look the same to me, so synth bands aren't that at time.
Anyway, Vortron crap.
Yes.
But our last... Oh, God, this is our last one. This is a bad section. Our last game in this episode, because there weren't... Just to say something, you may be thinking, why is there only 8 games? Because there weren't enough games released in this episode. And so there you go. And in this issue, we're reviewing what's there.
We pick out the best ones to do.
We don't want to.
Trust
this
me.
Is what's there.
If I didn't have to play Vortron, I wouldn't have.
No, but we had no choice. And we had no choice but to play this next one. And when Graham says, did he get the short straw? No, we didn't. No, because I got to tell you about Mad Doctor. And so Mad Doctor, this was full price, $8.95. I don't even know where to start with this one. It has some kind of narrative. It's based around Frankenstein. So you are some kind of Mad Doctor, and you've got to go around at this kind of castle-y type place thing in this pseudo. It's like pseudo 3D. So the rooms are rendered into the screen, but when you walk, you don't get any bigger or smaller. So that 3D effect is instantly nullified into some, don't work. So because there's no kind of perspective on your main sprite, you walk around places. You start off in a room with a giant bed and a table with some object on and a command that says, I am hungry. And context sensual, if you, context sensitive prompts will come up when you go near places like eat stuff, and you can move, you can do stuff. And then every time, at some point sort of thing, I think the game was trying to tell me something, because quite repeatedly it would just go to quit game. So I was like, I'm trying not to, because at some point we go look at picture. So I was looking at a picture, and you go from flick screen, because of course it's flick screen. You go from flick screen to flick screen, trying to sort of wander around. And eventually I made my way through some caves, and I found some stuff. I made my way through some caves, and I found what looked like some zombies, and then they killed me, and I turned it off. This is awful. Even Zapped, they were being generous. This gave it a bad review. This is a really bad. If I wanted to be very kind, this is some kind of early prototype, Lucasfilm-esque, where you're solving puzzles by going around. There's context-sensitive stuff, and you're doing stuff, but it's just awful, painful to play, painful to look at. The rudimentary visuals are terrible. The representation of the areas are rubbish. There's no real sound to speak of. It's trying to do something different. It's trying to do that, but just it doesn't reach anything that it's trying to get. It fails in every respect, sort of thing. And I couldn't get anything from this whatsoever. I thought this was truly bad, and I was glad to turn it off. Yeah, you? Did you like it? Is this got to end on a high?
No, it's not. I didn't like it. I agree with you completely for all the same reasons. However, there's some weirdness to this game. This game's really weird. It's odd.
Yes, it is.
So the idea that you have to dig up graves is weird in a game. The idea that you have to follow people around and stalk people and beat them up and then kidnap them for their body parts is kind of a bit gruesome. And the idea that you stitch this thing together, there's a weirdness about this game. It's kind of creepy.
It's Frankenstein, isn't it? I mean,
it is, but it's just, but it's the idea of that you can even lock people up in your dungeon and sort of indefinitely and just pick them out later and use them later. It's weird. There's weird stuff about it, but it's just it's an odd blend of horror, but with crazy ideas that don't quite work, and it doesn't have the graphical power and the inspirational ideas in its visuals to pull it off. So it's just dull. It doesn't have a lot of immediate fun or immediate payoff. There's a lot of wandering around, not a great deal to look at or do. It's a bit so. It's just like exactly as you've described. It's a bit of a snooze, and I think the inside there somewhere there's a bit of a cult hit in the same way that sort of probably Rocky Horror Picture Show is in the same sort of way that there's and I think if you persevered with it and you were willing to put up with some of that, you might find there's a game in there that gets quite good in some ways. I don't know. I was never going to get to that point, I can tell you, because I was like bored within the first sort of 6 or 7 screens. The controls were really weird on mine anyway, on the version I was playing, so there might have been an error with that, but I managed to persevere and move around the various rooms. But there's just, it wasn't very interesting or exciting, and nothing much happened. There's no hook. You need a hook on these kind of games to get you hooked in at the start, And normally that's kind of gives you an inclination of what you're going to be doing for the rest of the game. It gives you a sort of a thing to go at or something, not just you're wake up in a bedroom and it says you are hungry. Like,
there's no title screen, was there, or anything?
No, you just kind of start. You are hungry, need food and drink or whatever. And I'm like, right, couldn't seem to find a way to find any. Couldn't seem to pick anything up. Kept wandering around, bumping into things. I was like, do you know what? No, if you're making a game so inobvious, so not, if it's not obvious, not necessarily obvious, but if it's not directly clear what you have to do in the first couple of screens, and you have to wander around to try and pick that up, you're going to lose me as a player for this game. So no, Mad Doctor, no, not for me. No, dull. No. Might be for someone though.
It might be, but £9. Oof.
No, ridiculous.
It's terrible. So, that's it, really. That was the games. So that's our games for this part and our games for this episode. What have we looked at before we move into Crapverts? Actually, no. Let's do Crapverts first. What we got? Because we like our Crapverts, and really, I could do with a good Crapvert after those games.
Yeah, you need one. I feel like going for a real good Crapvert.
Absolutely. So we've got a couple here to look at. Our first one, schizophrenia.
Yeah, so it's always good to have a jovial advert about mental condition, isn't it?
Yeah. Or how to be in two minds about paranoia.
The laughs write themselves, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah. Although schizophrenia is written with an F, I think it's a PH bit. But anyway, so Spectrum Commodore. I mean, this is there's a guy who's taken the top of his head off, and there's another guy inside. While in the background, I don't know what those things are.
But have you noticed? Right, his name is Alphonse T Nerd.
Alphonse T Nerd. But yeah.
You look at the blurb that's on that advert and tell me that isn't the most overwordy blurb for four short sentences.
His alter ego has discovered the meaning of independence. If you discover the secrets of subatomic particle separators and clean lifts, this is the game for you. The puzzle of a lifetime, or two.
So, do you know what I bet this game is? I mean, without playing and remembering it, I'm willing to put money on that. This is kind of that. You've got you split into two, and one person has to press the on button at the bottom, and a bit like in some of those levels there's a number of games that do it, aren't there? Where is it?
I think God of War
does it. I think later down the line where you split into two. I know that they
there's loads
of games. Where Goonies does it. Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be one of those.
It is.
And the little graphic screen there looks a bit like sort of a blocky Mission Impossible. So there's probably vibes, but lifts and schizophrenia and mental paranoia and. Yeah, that sells it to me, that game, and that advert's plain old weird.
But this is another thing of one of those, like we said about Hunchback and the predominance of Hunchy and Quasimodo and Hunchback at the Olympics and stuff. It was, the 80s was just a time where it was like, you got a disability, we're going to make a game out of it.
Absolutely. Well, not only has he got a split personality, but look at the size of his ring finger on that. It's massive. He's got a massive finger. I mean, that finger is huge. His little finger's as big as his fingers are disproportionate, and those are some. Are his palms hairy, or is that just shading? It's bad shading.
It's bad shading, I think. Why is he dressed? Why is he dressed to the nines?
It's formal dinner, yeah.
He's going to a formal dinner while in the background. What are it's like a tape or sort of an ornate tape player. And why are lifts floating in the what's going on?
I don't know. It's kind of and look at that Quicksilver logo. That doesn't shout 1985 at you. I don't know what else does. Look at it. It's sharp. It's angular. They look like the levels from that mobile game where you've got to chop the bits off with a samurai sword. I can't remember what it's called, but
there's so much bevel going on.
That is heavy on the bevel, isn't it? That, and it's got that RoboCop. It's like RoboCop style writing. You know, that's the same colour scheme as RoboCop, but nowhere near as good.
I've got a feeling that game looks like, is it elevator action?
Yes, there is a little bit of it's got an enormous amount of elevators on strings, it seems, on the floating around the background. So I
do like as well at the bottom, this is quite a nice sort of sign of the times. Available from all good software shop, but in case of difficulty, write to. And
what kind of difficulty?
Yeah, what?
I mean, who would buy a game called Schizophrenia? Anyway, I suppose it is a play on it, you know. But
anything was game for anything was worthy of a.
I know. Did they do a series of these games based on sort of mental anguish? So good old Schizophrenia was followed up with another mentally challenged idea.
Bipolar.
OCD, the game. It's just weird. But you could get away with stuff like that in the 80s. I don't think you'd get away with it now. I think maybe you would.
No, I don't think you would.
I don't see iTunes, or the Apple Store being able to sort of say we've got trouble with the title of your game and the premise of it, because it just feel like you're taking the mickey out of people with bad mental health.
yeah, mental health issues sort of thing. So not good. But okay, so Schizophrenia is an odd one sort of thing. But I don't think it prepares us for our next Crapvert. Okay, so the next one is a real mishmash. They've gone whole hog on this. They've not hold back. The game is called Souls of Darkon. There is so much on this page, and obviously you can go look at all these. And I do, if you are listening to this, go look at the website, zappedthepast.com. Go to the Crapverts section. You can find all these there, and it is worth a look at these, especially this one. Don't look at any others, don't care. Look at this one, because where to start? Let's see. Do we just work our way down?
I think you have to with that. So much is wrong with this. It beggars belief, really.
Yeah, it does. So it's Souls of Darkon. Okay, that's the title of this game. I don't know why. So it's in two different fonts. Souls of is one font,
cut out from a newspaper by the look of it.
But by the look of it, yes, it's cut out from something and just overlaid onto this, because it's red writing with a white background and not even cut out the middles of the O's.
Yeah, no, that's not great. That ain't no stroke they put on that. That ain't a stroke. That's been badly cut out.
Yeah. So they put that on there, and then we've got the word Darkon. Go for it, Graham. You're a typeface man.
That is a gradient at the top and some kind of gradient at the bottom. There's a lot of that kind of effect, sort of a blue to sort of
that
brownish gradient.
Look,
yeah, so you get that kind of sky to dark landscape. There's loads of games and titles that have that kind of graphic, but in fair play to them, there's no border on that text and there's no bevel. Ironically, it could probably done with something to separate it from that background a little bit, because it kind of blends in. But it looks to me like it's been cut out with a pair of scissors. Look inside that O. That O is not. It's not. It's been cut out with a sharp Stanley knife or something. That has.
This does look like it's been constructed on a page where somebody's done this.
No doubt about it.
Where someone's done the painting and someone's done some text and they've just cut it out and laid it on top, and that'll do.
Yes, absolutely right.
Because under the text, okay, so Souls of Darkon is bad enough. We've got then we've got the only be described as the top half of a really angry floating minotaur.
Yes, that's a minotaur-ish.
With a massive mouth. Now, I can only be assumed he's really angry because he's got no hands.
Or eyes.
Because they're kind of covered up with the hair. I don't know what it is. But the hands are really worrying. It's like he's got glove puppets on.
Well, it looks like a really upset rocker who's missed a Metallica concert.
It looks like a member of Man of War.
He's got no hands, so he's got a spike.
He's obviously the singer. He can't play the guitar with those fingers because he's got no fingers.
No, he's got a spike on one hand and a knob on the other. He's got one nipple.
He might be able to play the steel drum.
Yes.
Not that Man of War were replete with steel drums.
I don't remember them ever venturing into that prog rock territory right there.
So this floating. So the whole background of the whole page sort of thing is a sort of gradient central fill. So it's dark at the edge of a sort of darkish bluish thing that goes to a white in the middle, but center. So it's a circle going outwards. So this Minotaur seems to be floating in the middle. What's that grey blur as well? It's coming out of his mouth to the right. Isn't more hair? He's sort of floating in the middle of this white thing. Okay, at this point, it's kind of some kind of fantasy nonsense. Souls of Darkon, right? And then beneath that, there is a crossed sword and an axe.
Is that a sword? I thought that was a magic wand.
It's got a hilt.
Oh, it is a sword. My God, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, it's got a hilt with a star on, which would make that hilt really uncomfortable to wield.
Yeah, and it's really small. You got to have small hands to wield that sword.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe it's made for that Minotaur.
Could be.
And then there's the axe with the moon on it, sort of thing. And okay, so far so fanciest and pretty bad, sort of thing. Then we get to the droids. Which I am guessing is probably not the sentence you thought was coming next. No. Because there are two droids at the bottom. One is circular, like bowing, or sort of praising the floating Minotaur, whilst the other looks like Clamps from Futurama. He's sort of pointing his pointy thing at you with one arm, and he's looking straight at you, and he's also wearing a really big monocle, and just looking straight at the advert. I can't, for the life of me, figure out what this game is.
No.
There's no screenshot, so I don't know. I honestly do not know. There's so much going on in this advert. As a whole, it's almost... You can look at any one section of it and get a different game.
It makes me very uneasy when it simply says a text adventure with graphics, because that's very loosely describing anything, isn't it? Any game could be described as that, really. It's just, what is it? It's a text adventure with graphics. What kind of graphics? Don't know. I haven't really drawn them yet. It's got some kind of flying Minotaur that attacks robots with a giant axe, possibly.
Maybe.
Why has the robot got a monocle? We don't know the answer to that. Why is it wearing a tunic? We don't know. Why has he got some kind of
isn't it?
hose pipe? We don't know.
I don't know. There's so much. I suppose this is the best game design that's ever come out of Bridlington.
I'd still like the task set logo at the bottom, which uses the same cutout technique as Souls of. So, at least they've kept it thematically similar in that. But, next time, get someone professional to cut that out. Don't just use it, don't use a craft knife because you never, and just cut out if you're going to do it, cut out the centers of the O's, the E's and the A's, things like that. Just little details, make it. Little details. But,
it's all about the little thoughts.
There's no clue as to what direction that game could be. Are you playing a giant Minotaur? Is that who you're fighting? Do you play the robots? Who knows what that's about?
Yeah, I don't remember any robots in ancient Greek myth.
I don't remember ever coming across Souls of Darkon ever. So I wonder if we'll come across it sometime.
I don't know. If it's a text adventure, probably not. We're not really looking at adventures, are we?
No, thankfully not.
So
it's a text adventure with graphics. Remember, it's got graphics, whatever they may be.
You know what that's going to mean? It's just going to be really slow drawn visuals on it.
I'm suspecting not great. So.
No, but anyway, Souls of Darkon. It's worth a look. Go have a look because your mind could try. You can try and work it out because I honestly can't. So that's our Crapverts. Yeah, we've got some more coming up in the next part, which are equally as bewildering. But I think that'll do for this part. I think
that'll do.
So that was part one. We have looked at, what have we looked at today? We've looked at Monty on the Run, which we liked. We've looked at Speed King, which was Super Zaxxon, Shoot 'em Up. We've looked at Nodes of Yesod, Rocket Roger, Vortron, and Mad Doctor. A smorgasbord from good to bad, with obviously the standout being the music from Monty on the Run, probably, which is the thing we like the most. So there we go. That is part one of episode 6. Coming up in part 2, we will be looking at games such as Byron McGuigan's World Championship Boxing. We will be looking at Silu. We will be looking at Vegan Attack. Oh, God. We'll be looking at Tour de France. And we will be looking, among others, at Dickie's Diamonds, which, to my disappointment, was not a World of Sport spin-off. So we'll find out all about that next episode. So stay with us. Come back next week to hear our reviews of them. More Crapverts. We'll look at films and TV from October 85. And that's that. I've been Adrian Mills. You've been
Graham Raddings.
You have indeed. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye now. Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, sights, sounds and news from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zapped 64 magazine, published at the time. We will be back next week with another podcast, so do please join us. Until then, please head over to zappedtothepast.com to sign up to our email list, as well as check out all the links and resources in the show notes. You'll also find us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram under Zapped to the Past. The Zapped to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap64 magazine, the Zapped to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe and see you next time.